Today, Virgin Galactic makes its debut here at the New York Stock Exchange as a SPAC. You can see right now the stock's trading up about 5% right now. Joining me in a first on CNBC interview, Virgin Galactic founder Sir Richard Branson, Social Capital CEO Chamath Palihapitiya, and Virgin Galactic CEO George Whitesides. Good morning to you all. Congratulations. I think this is probably the first, fireworks, literally. It's probably the first time I've ever seen pyrotechnics on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
We like to make a splash.
Absolutely.
No, it's very exciting. I mean, we've had 15 years of developing Virgin Galactic to the stage where it's just put 5 people into space. Now it's wonderful to enable the public to come in and invest alongside us. I've been here on this floor to launch Virgin Mobile, Virgin America, and 1 or 2 other companies in the years past. And it's all gone really well. And obviously, we hope that our spaceship company will go as well as the others.
In space, in the space business, there's a lot of talk about milestones and firsts. In terms of the fact that Virgin Galactic is now the first publicly traded space tourism company, commercial human spaceflight company, how big of a milestone do you think this is for commercial spaceflight?
I think it's a very big milestone. If the public wants to, take a little, dabble a little bit in a spaceship company or own a little bit of a spaceship company, they can now do so. We have this wonderful ticker, which I've never heard of the word ticker before, but STCE, and that's how people can...
I was impressed you got that, by the way.
Well, I'd love to tell the story, but I'm told I'm not allowed to. But it was actually the generosity of another exchange that let us have it. So, we've got off to a great start. I mean, the share price went up 11% on Friday and another 5% today, we've managed to completely fund Virgin Galactic through to when it breaks even, and so exciting time.
Yeah, and Chamath, as an investor in this company now, I know one of the things you've come on CNBC and talked about in the past is how impressive the gross margins are. Given the fact that service hasn't actually started yet, how are you thinking about those gross margins when it does, and what does that mean for profitability for this company?
I think the profitability of this business is going to look as good as one of the best software companies around, and that's why I was so excited. You're in the business of hardware, but it looks like software, and that is very different than many of the other technology-oriented hardware companies that have gone public recently. So this is a business that at scale will have almost 70% operating margins, which is incredible. And it's a testament to, the $1 billion that Richard has invested before I came here, and then the team that George has built that's been able to build something that is largely now de-risked and ready to commercialize and monetize.
What do you think, especially now that there's going to be quarterly earnings reports, what do you think investors are going to want to hear from this company?
I think there's going to be 2 vectors that are really going to matter. The first vector is to describe the demand. So there are already 600 plus customers that have paid, $80 million, about $120 million in future business. There's 3,000 or 4,000 more after today. I suspect there'll be many more thousands after that who want to give us money. And so I think understanding that demand will be really important for people to get comfortable around the long-term projections. And then the second is about George's execution ability and his team's path to getting these rockets in the air on a more and more frequent basis.
Let's talk a little bit about that, shall we, George? I know the company is targeting next year to begin commercial service, 600-person backlog right now. How big is this market for suborbital space tourism? And I guess longer term, how many people are going to be paying $250,000 for a ticket to space?
Well, the exciting thing, Morgan, is that we're in the highest growth part of the luxury sort of services experience. It's out-of-home luxury experiences is the part that's growing the fastest. And that's basically what we're doing. And so, globally, we think around 2 million people can experience this over the coming years at this price point. And then, of course, over time, we'll be able to reduce that price point. And at that point, the market just explodes. Like it's 10 times as many to 40 million people. So we think it's like a huge market, and it's going to be capacity constrained for the near term.
Now, publicly speaking, there really is no direct comparable for Virgin Galactic. In the private market, there is one comparable company, and that's Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin. How are you thinking about competition?
Well, I think what Jeff and the team over at Blue are doing is great. We think that we've got a really attractive service offering, but ultimately we think this is going to be a capacity-constrained market. Like, more people are going to want to go to space than either of us can bring in terms of service. So we think we've got an amazing experience from our runway takeoff to runway landing, and then a very safe rocket motor, and just a wonderful experience in space where people are going to be able to, have these amazing suits and float around the cabin and experience the wonder of looking down at planet Earth. So I think it's going to be a great market for both.
Of course, you're talking about the space suit, which I see Richard is wearing here. That was designed by Under Armour. You unveiled this a couple of weeks ago as well. One of the questions that gets put to me a lot by prospective investors is how do you know it's going to be safe? Right, and so when it comes to space, when it comes to space, I mean, space is hard. Human spaceflight, even harder. It's got to basically go off without a hitch, near perfect, no real room for error here. How do you ensure that that's the case, and what do you tell people?
Well, it's actually funny. I was a customer first, and so me and my wife are going to go. Chamath's going to go. Richard is, of course, going to be in the first commercial flight. So we're very confident that this is going to be a safe experience. Basically, what it comes down to two things is one is we've got a very safe architecture that can abort in any phase of flight, and the other thing is that we've tested it extensively. So really, our system has been in test for over 10 years, and what we've been able to do is just really drive up the reliability of the system so that we feel real high confidence in the system itself.
Yeah. Hypersonic travel has come up, this idea of point-to-point travel around Earth, and certainly seen, at least by some of the analysts that are starting to look at this industry as the big long-term opportunity. I know it's been discussed with Virgin Galactic as well. Was that always part of the plan when you started this company?
It was. One of the reasons that we built our spaceship like an airplane was because by flying this airplane at 3,500 times the speed of sound, sorry, not the speed of sound, 3,500 miles an hour, we're already testing a spaceship or an airplane that can travel from point to point at tremendous speeds. So we've just tied up with Boeing, and we're going to be exploring point-to-point travel with them. And I think the reason they invested in Virgin Galactic was because we've had 15 years of experience in this to date.
How much was the hypersonic piece of this puzzle the driving force for you to invest?
To me, it really represents the long-term optionality in the business. So the way to think about it is, today what we're buying is a really interesting, very lucrative, super high margin space tourism business, where we'll be able to take some of the profits to iterate on this other idea. Long-haul travel today, 10-hour plus flights, people are spending $300+ billion a year. And Morgan, a hypersonic plane can take a 10-hour flight and reduce it to 90 minutes. So the way to think about this is we're going to go and pioneer and really push this idea of space tourism, getting people to space. But as Richard said, once you do that, you get a test bed of technologies. We have a free option on hypersonics. And when we deliver a product in the 5 to 10 year time frame, we will be able to directly disrupt a $300+ billion revenue business for the airlines.
Wow.
I think one other important thing to point out is the environmental footprint of what we're doing. If you have a land-based rocket and you're sending people into space from the ground, it's going to use up an enormous amount of energy. By doing it the way we're doing it, we can put somebody into space for less than the environmental footprint of sending somebody on a Virgin Atlantic plane upper class to London to New York and back. And I think that's going to become more and more and more important in the years to come. So we're bringing the cost of putting people into space down dramatically as far as the environment's concerned.
Before I move on here quickly, George, when am I actually going to be able, as a customer, when would I actually be able to get offered and buy a hypersonic trip?
Well, I think you're looking probably in the maybe 5-year time frame, something like that.
And in the meantime, you can go to space with us.
That's right.
In the meantime.
And you get this thrown in.
Yes. It's very fashionable. There's been a lot of commentary
we have a very nice female one as well.
Too.
Yep, the shoes are rather, well, I don't know if they're sexy, but oh my God, I haven't done mine up. Right, that's better now.
So, Chamath, I want to get your thoughts because we've seen a number of companies go public this year. There's been a lot of talk, particularly particularly coming out of Silicon Valley, that given the way shares of some of these big tech companies have traded, that the IPO process, the traditional IPO process, is broken. Given the fact that Virgin Galactic now just directly listed on the exchange through Social Capital's SPAC, do you see this as a model that other companies are going to adopt?
I do, and I hope that this is a really good litmus test and a case study of the best of what this can be. Pure technology companies, founded by iconic founders, built by great people who are like sober and just want money to build the business, should look at things like direct listings and should now look at things like SPACs. So I've been involved in 2 processes this year. One is a direct listing of Slack, where I'm on the board, and now Virgin, where I'm chairman after this transaction. Both of these 2 transactions got everything that we wanted to done. We avoided traditional processes in a way that limited management distraction, and now we're set up to just run the business. So this entire process for us, from start to finish, took 3.5 months. The company got all the money they needed, and George and his team has been able to focus on running the business, which is the most important thing. So I think these kinds of transactions and processes are the future. And I think a lot of that traditional oligopoly or monopoly run by Morgan and Goldman are probably, those days are numbered.
Yeah, and just because we're on the topic of this IPO process right now, I do want to get your thoughts. You came on CNBC back in September, talked a little bit, pretty critical of WeWork. A lot has happened since then. The ouster of Adam Neumann. We've seen SoftBank swoop in to basically take the company over. Do you think it's on a sustainable path now?
I still think that the big question is that they have $48 billion of lease obligations. And the way that they engineered this transaction was to avoid the fallout of that falling onto the SoftBank balance sheet. But this is a really precarious company. If there's any downtick in demand, any downtick, meaningful, these guys are going to have a very difficult time figuring out how to make the economics of what they've created work. That being said, the product market fit is unquestionable. And I think any company, large or small, probably doesn't want to sign a 10-year lease anymore. We would all love a beautiful office in a beautiful environment that's pretty turnkey. I just think that the way they executed it may turn out to be not sustainable.
Yeah. I think probably the exception there is Spaceport America, which is not an office and is pretty amazing down in New Mexico, which where Virgin Galactic will be headquartered. I also just want to get your thoughts on Facebook, too, because that's in the news. Between earnings this week, Mark Zuckerberg testifying on the Hill. Last week, a torrent of criticism and certainly scrutiny right now. Is it warranted, and what do you think it means for the company going forward?
I think that they're at a very difficult point, and it is the intersection of business logic and morality. And at some point, your morals and your ethics conflict with what the right business logic is, because if you follow your morals and ethics, you may make changes to the business that literally suppress the value of the business. The other alternative is just to say, you know what, let's just take a hear no evil, see no evil approach, and we're going to maximize business value.
They should do the right thing.
So far, their choices have been the latter, but I agree with Richard. They should do the right thing.
Yeah, but in the end, they'll survive much longer by doing the right thing, even if it has a short-term knock to their earnings.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you.
And so just to bring this all back, speaking of trips back to space right now, given the fact that we do seem to be ushering in this new era of space, how are you thinking about it longer term? Because in addition to Virgin Galactic, you do have Virgin Orbit. And this idea of a so-called billionaire-led space race, is that the right way to think about it?
I'm afraid you do have to be in that sort of billionaire bracket if you're going to go into the space business. And I think it's I obviously have a bias, but I think it's good that people who've got money are investing in exciting new things, employing thousands of engineers and pushing the barriers forward. So yeah, Virgin Galactic next year. We're going to have an incredibly exciting year. I'll be going to space, and other people will be going to space. And Virgin Orbit, which is not actually part of the Virgin Galactic company, that should have put a big rocket from a 747 into orbit, and start to put satellites around the Earth in a much more affordable, better way.
All right, gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
If you need a journalist to take one of these trips to the edge of space, I would just like to throw my name in the hat. Congratulations on Virgin Galactic going public today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.